All right. Thank you, Vashti, for joining us today.
Thanks for
We're
having
really
me.
excited to talk to you.
Yeah,
Where
thanks
are
so
you
much
right
for having
now?
me. I'm at my studio in my apartment in Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, that's awesome.
Nice. Well, we're in the
Yeah.
art room. Behind me, you'll see a long display board, and Ashlyn just helped me for about an hour. We have been putting up 62 with Ashlyn. She's number 62. Comic books that the students in 7th and 8th grade have been making for our program called Comics for Cancer, which Matt started years ago. And I'll let him tell you about that. But basically you were our featured author / illustrator for this year. Every year I want to do like an interview, and Matt started this with some guys that he knows, actually a 13-year-old that has a line of graphic novels. So he was our featured artist last year. And we're going to put this recording on our website called Comics for Cancer. And that's a Weebly website, and that's what we use to sell the comics online.
Oh, wow.
So we have some of the books here that I have in my classroom of yours that the students were looking over. And we were talking about style and, writing and illustrating, because they were doing both like you did for your series. And so that's kind of where this idea to talk to you came from. I'm going to let Matt tell you about Comics for Cancer because he started it. It's his baby.
Sure. Thank you so much for taking the time this afternoon to speak with us. My name is Matt Bell. This is my second year at Nandua Middle, but I've taught on the Eastern Shore for 16 years. I think one of the things that's unfortunate about our school system is the empirically driven SOL sort of system. And you would know as a creative spirit that there are so many gifts that our students have that aren't, the light is not shown upon them just through a multiple choice test in science or mathematics or what have you. And so while we still want to achieve when it comes to those, we also want to give our students those chances to bloom and reach outside of their current selves and to be inspired and to chase those dreams that just don't show up just by, hey, you passed your test or you didn't pass your test. And so many of our students really do have great gifts, as you'll see later with Ashlyn and with any other comics that the students have come up with. So basically the idea was that one, we wanted to give people, our artists and our authors, an experience as pragmatic, as realistic as we could, to take that idea and bring it all the way to fruition and try to play all the roles of cover artist and illustrator and penciler, everything that we really could, even marketing and that sort of thing. And then take it a little bit further into humanitarian efforts. I personally have lost a couple of very, very important people to cancer. And, probably every student and staffer that we have here has been affected by it in some way. And so this is maybe the 5th year of the program, with last year being the most successful, with Mrs. Clark adding so much energy into it and Nandua really taking it seriously. We generated $1,300 selling the comics for $3 a piece, and then sent all of the money to the American Cancer Society. And so we wanted to reach out to you this year because you're an amazing illustrator and author and successful local amazing hero and inspirer, to an inspiration to our boys and girls that want to look into these options for their career path. And so you're a great selection. Sarah referenced Demetrius Motion Bullock and Bryce Bullock. He's the CEO of his own company, and he's 14 just now. And he started putting his books out when he was 8 years old, and they live just up in Delaware. And I met them at a Comic-Con, bought his book, showed my students, they were floored, and it just kind of evolved from there. And they were our speakers last year, and you are this year. And Sarah let me borrow your books. They're absolutely amazing. My students currently are doing an essay on unsung heroes of Black History Month, And so we certainly used your books and learned about doing research and citing sources and all these sorts of things that we can that are SOL driven, but also we're just finishing up our Comics for Cancer comics. And so we thought it would be wonderful to ask some student generated questions about, how you became so successful. And they're just, many of them have met you before in some of the local events that you've done. And it was really, really clear what a mark you had made on them. So thank you so, so much.
All right, well, with that, I'm going to start with some student questions. I had a 7th grade class that really blew me away with their just their ideas for their stories. And I asked them to take a break and look at your books and come up with some questions for you. So I have 3 questions. They'll be watching this recording later, so they'll get to hear your answers. From America, in 7th grade, she said, whenever you hit a slump during the process of making a book, how would you collect yourself or regain motivation?
That's a really great intuitive question, because inevitably that slump comes, especially when you're trying to tackle something that feels so big and important. And it happens with every single project that I work on. So, it's a little bit different per book. So something like Little Leaders or Little Dreamers or Little Legends, these books are, filled with stories of real people. And so, sometimes it can get overwhelming trying to kind of distill that down into something so kind of bite-sized. How do you turn someone's entire life into just 300 words? So something that I would always do is try to, do some, quick Googling and try to find videos of either people talking about that person's work and what that means to them, or find videos of that person talking about their work, if that's available, to kind of get that kind of personal connection to the story, to kind of reset my reason for doing this project. But the slumps always happen. If I'm working on illustrating a book for somebody else, and I'm really just kind of stuck with my own ideas of how to translate that story, I really just have to kind of step away from the project for a while and do something entirely different. Maybe try to make something with my hands or go out for a walk. And usually the ideas will kind of come to you when you're least expecting them. And everyone says that, but it's really important to not try to force it when you're really kind of stuck, because, sometimes those really special creative things can come from, doing something entirely different. So in certain cases, it's watching a movie that might kind of spark my desire to make something incredible and beautiful. Sometimes it's going to a museum or the library, which is my favorite thing, just flipping through books and just kind of trying to identify what feeling I want to capture in the work and give to the reader. So it really varies, but it's always about kind of just offering your brain a little bit of space to process the ideas and just like take a break.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. From Carson, in 7th grade also, he wants to know, how old were you when you published your first book?
Wow, I should have done the math on this. I think I was 28 when my first book came out. We're just gonna go with that. Yeah,
That was Little Dreamers or Little Leaders?
Little Leaders was my first book, and it came out in 2017. Okay, so I was 28, just about to be 29.
Yeah, and then there's a board book. Isn't there a board book of this? Because I think I have it at home for Violet.
There is, yeah. So it started with the Little Leaders, Bold Women in Black History, and then Little Dreamers, and then Little Legends. And throughout that process of working on all 3 of those books, which came out in sequence every year, I did the board book adaptation for the younger readers.
Yeah, that one's at home. So I'm sure Walter, who's 7 months, is going to be chewing on the side of that.
Oh yeah, that's why they're thicker.
All right, thank you. And Kamari, just to go along with this, Kamari in 7th grade said, how did you become a good writer?
Oh, Kamari, I tell you, I have no idea. Here's the story. I'll try to tell it as quickly as I can. But back when I was at Nandua High School, I was in all of these advanced classes. I was taking like AP courses, and it was the summer before my senior year. And I knew that I was going to be taking AP English. And I was so insecure about my writing. I was so scared that I was a bad writer. So much so that in the summer before school started, I was kind of crying myself to sleep, staying up at night. I couldn't focus. I was so anxious and nervous about taking this, higher level course because I thought that I wouldn't be able to do it, and that I wouldn't be good. And that for me was really scary. In the end, I decided not to take that advanced course. And that meant that when I went to college, I still needed my English writing requirement credit. And so when I got there, because it's a credit that everyone needs in college, I had to take it. And there were so many options. You could take a writing class on rock and roll. You could take a writing class on politics, on the war, on anything. And I found one that was called America Through Film. And it was my very first filmmaking course. And I realized, film studies kind of writing course. I had to just write five-page papers on movies. And I realized once I had something to say, I became less scared about my writing. I had something that I wanted people to understand, and I needed to get these ideas out. And so that insecurity and that fear kind of washed away. And if it weren't for that course, I wouldn't have studied filmmaking, and I wouldn't have gone to Cal Arts for graduate school, I wouldn't have taken those illustration courses, and I wouldn't have eventually become an illustrator. It all happened in sequence. And I'm grateful for that experience. And I'm grateful that I listened to myself. I wasn't ready for that course, and that's perfectly fine. And what helped me learn was that writing wasn't the thing that was scary. It was not knowing what to say. And so the way I became a good writer was by writing a lot. And the way I was able to write a lot was to find topics that were interesting to me. And now, I'm still always insecure that I'm a bad writer, but what's more important to me is sharing the stories that are in these books. And that's what I learned about myself is I like telling stories. I like sharing them with people and connecting with people. And, I'm sure there's a lot to learn in terms of my, poetic language or my syntax, and I'll learn it. I'll learn it along the way. But what's important for me is sharing the stories with young people and having them connect with the reader. So that's the only way, honestly, that I got there, was to just find the route that worked for me. And that was through
Isn't that
storytelling.
funny how you got where you are by this train of events? Who knows where you would be if you had changed a course along the way. That's so cool. Well,
Yeah.
Some of Ashlyn's questions are about college, so I feel like I should switch places with her because she wants to know about your college.
Thanks, Vashti.
Hi.
So one question that I had about your college education was, where did you go to college exactly?
I went to the University of Virginia for undergrad.
When did you start drawing?
Drawing was something that I always did as a young person. I'm sure you know that all through kind of elementary school, everyone draws, everyone goes to art class. And then as you start getting older and older, those courses start becoming optional. And the people who choose to keep drawing do, and lots of folks stop. I always made drawing a part of my life. And I thought I was really good at it, and I loved doing it, but I, for some reason, got very nervous about what does one do with good drawing skills. Do you grow up and become a drawer? I didn't think that was possible. Turns out there are lots of options. Spoiler alert. But I wasn't clear on what options were available for me as a person who liked to draw, because I didn't like painting. And the only kind of representation that I had was looking at movies, and there would be people in these big studios with giant canvases throwing paint on the wall. And I thought, that's not what I wanted. And that was the only representation I had. And, you know, one of the main reasons I wanted to write these books was to show that there are many different options and many different paths for people. But I stopped drawing. That's what actually happened, is I stopped drawing because I didn't think that there was a career path for me in it. And I tried to force myself into so many different things that I wasn't that good at, things that I didn't like and I didn't enjoy. And finally, when I kind of listened to myself and realized that art was going to have to be a part of my life, either professionally or just personally, when I realized that, I was able to kind of see a clear path forward. And that's what led me to studying film, which led me to going to art school, which led me on the path towards becoming an illustrator. But one of the key parts of that story is that I stopped drawing. I stopped drawing when I got to college, and I didn't draw for that 4 years. No, maybe I stopped drawing probably a little bit before college because I didn't think that it was something that I should do. And I eventually kind of found my way back into art. And when I started drawing again, really trying to draw, when I got to graduate school, I realized I wasn't that good anymore. I was like, what happened to me? I used to be so good at this. But it was so clear to me. It's not that, you know, drawing is this talent that some people are born with and some people are not. That's not true. It is definitely a skill that you can learn, anyone can learn, and the more you practice, you will get better. And I always compare it to running. So I always ask when I'm doing a presentation, like, if you were a runner and you ran every single day for 5 years and then you stopped running for 5 years, do you think you would be able to pick up right back where you were at the same speeds after 5 years? Absolutely not. And it's all about that time and that practice. And so when I picked up drawing again, when I was in film school, I just knew that, okay, I'm not as good as I used to be. My hand is not doing what my brain is trying to tell it to do. But I know that if I practice every single day, I will get better. And I just made it a goal of mine. And I kept it personal. I kept it private for a long time. And eventually I found a way forward for it to be part of my career. And then I turned it into a much bigger career. So I really think that, you know, it was always there. And it was always an important way for me to express myself. And now it's just kind of like the main thing that I do. So I would say for anyone who likes to draw, you know, keep practicing at it because you will get better. And, you know, if you're not feeling it some days, that's totally okay. You can just, you know, put it on the back burner. You can always come back to it.
I wanted to know who inspires you to like do what you do.
You know, it's a mixture of things. My parents were always supportive of my art. They didn't always get it, but they were always confident that I would figure things out, probably because I'm a really hard worker. So that confidence actually means so much. But when I think about the people who really influenced art in my life, I have an uncle, my dad's best friend, who was a photographer. And he was one of the first people to gift me a paint set that, you know, even though I wasn't, you know, super into painting, it seemed so professional. It was like so special to me that he thought that I was worthy of this beautiful art set. And that meant the most to me. When my mom would bring me paper from her job, you know, special size paper or pens from work, that felt so special because I knew that they saw that I had the potential to turn it into something nice, you know? So having those supportive people in my life means so much. And beyond that, I look towards the artists that are doing the things that I like, and doing things that are totally different from me. So I'm constantly trying to absorb work from other people and keep my mind open to different ways and means of expression. So, you know, it might have been learning about different sculptors and painters in college in my art history courses, but it's also meeting people through children's book writing and illustrating. So I really don't think that I put any sort of hierarchy on who inspires me. It's sort of like, who is making meaning with their artwork in a way that feels special. So, sometimes that's my friends, sometimes that's kids that I meet when I go to school visits, and sometimes that's, famous artists and painters. I think I have a Van Gogh right there. I have an embroidery that my cousin made for me. It's so beautiful. I have a print from an artist that I just admire, and I found her work online. So it's just a mixture of things. And I think I have a quote from Henry David Thoreau over there. So it's a big mixture.
Cool.
What made you decide to publish a book?
Yeah, that's a good question. I knew that I liked making art, and I still always make lots of art for myself, and I don't always share it with people. Lots of the things that I do are just for my personal means of expression, an idea that I have, and I just want to get it out. But making work to be published means something entirely different. Specifically, children's books are for children. They're for young people, and they're for young readers. And I wanted, when I started working on my first book, Little Leaders, it was just a project that I was doing for myself. I wanted to learn more about women in American history. I felt like I kind of heard a lot of the same stories over and over and over again during Black History Month when I was growing up. And I thought to myself, it'd be fun to just learn about a new person every single day, and, force myself to do just one drawing a day. And I realized when I started working on it, I was connecting to those stories in such a deep way. And I realized if I had known about all of these different types of artists and all of these different people when I was growing up, how much of a difference that might have made for me as a young person who is scared of becoming an artist, scared of being a writer. I was dealing with a lot of fear as a young person. So it was really through that process of working on something that was meaningful for me that I realized could be meaningful for other people. And I wanted to be able to share those stories with others. And so that's why I pursued publishing the work, to specifically get it in front of young readers. And, there are different things, different ways to approach writing for young people. And I had to learn a lot about, how to share information in an engaging and an interesting way. You can tell that I talk a lot. Sometimes just rambling isn't the best way to tell a story. So, there were so many different things that I had to learn, but to me, that was an important part of the process to publish these books, to get them in front of young readers, because, I hoped that they might inspire people to try new things, maybe offer, a reflection of that young person. There's this famous quote by an educator, Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop. She says that books can be windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. So a mirror lets you see a reflection of yourself. A window helps you to look out into another world, and a sliding glass door helps you to leave your space and enter into someone else's world. And really, through those different processes, books can help us understand the world and understand ourselves.
I love that quote.
Same.
I want to look that quote up.
I think that one will go on a poster in the
Nice.
classroom.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so speaking of publishing, who is your publisher?
My books, Little Leaders and Little Dreamers and Legends, are all published by Little Brown Books for Young Readers. But I've worked with a number of the other publishers. So this new book that I've done, I Love You Like Yellow, is published through Abrams. A book I illustrated called Sulwe was Simon & Schuster. And a book I illustrated called Hair Love was Penguin Random House.
Random question. What's your cat's name?
His name's Sky. He's a little flighty. Maybe he'll come back.
We saw his tail behind your head. We're like, is that a cat? He wants to be in the video too.
Yeah.
Thank you. Vashti, do you want to show her your some of the stuff you've been doing?
Yeah, sure.
Ashlyn brought her iPad, so she's going to show you some of her sketching for her book that she's doing.
Oh, great.
So this is, okay, I'm not sure exactly it's gonna. Can you see that?
Oh yeah, I see the panels. I see some of the characters. I can't quite see the words, but wow, that's great.
Yeah,
And you're working in
so-
Procreate?
Yeah, I am.
Tell her your concept for your story.
So like right now there's like a pandemic going around. So I thought that it would be cool if like my comic could be about Corona, and like what it would do. So what I've done is I've taken Corona and I've made it into a character. And she is the villain of the story, of course. And she is trying to invade Cell City, which is supposed to represent the human body. And the heroes, there are white blood cells, vitamin C and vitamin D, and iron and zinc, which is combined into one character, and his name is Metallic. So this is all about like them trying to stop Corona and all the variants, to stop them from killing the mayor, which is the heart. And yeah, so it's taken a few months to do it. I'm one of the last people to actually turn in the comic. And I think that it looks pretty good. And I'm thinking, should I give a spoiler?
Yes. We're thinking, we're planning.
So at the end of the story, what's going to happen is that the vaccine is going to come and stop one of the variants, and Corona and Omicron, they're going to be in this house, and they have the heart and the lungs captured and tied up. So what the heroes are going to do is they're going to come and like stop them, and then the police are going to come, and then like everyone that Corona has kidnapped is safe. So yeah, that's the end of the story.
That seems epic. It seems like
Right? Vashti, my jaw was dropping every day that she was in my class working on this. And I was like,
Well,
oh my gosh, every day.
because it's really creative. It's a really thoughtful story. It seems big though, so I can understand why you're taking your time with it. That's good.
Check out her cover. This is her cover so far. It's a glare.
Is there a
Can you
glare?
take a step back? Oh, great. I see the
So I'm trying to
city and
talk
I
her
see
into-
the two characters.
I'm trying to talk her into let's publish this thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, my first thought is like, maybe your story is a lot bigger than, the time and space that you have, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't keep working on it. So you can do your version for now, but, don't let that story go. Like, keep developing it. There's so many variants, so there could be a cliffhanger and we have to deal with the new variant and all these other things. I think like it's a really layered story. So I think there's so much that you can do with it. It's really impressive.
Thank you.
Matt, do you want to go? Because if you need to step out and leave early,
Wow, amazing. So in my English class, my students are doing comics for cancer as well, but also students that are in Sarah's art class are doing them. So it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. When our books were done, we can come down and Sarah, here are 30 books. It's new visual candy for everyone. And she says, wait till you see what my kids have been doing. We've got that going on. And then like any project or any assignment or any class, if you're thriving and really feeling that energy and pushing along, you have students that are, taking the best of themselves and putting themselves out there, as you see through Ashlyn's work. And we have some that, our art is not necessarily their passion, but maybe the writing is fantastic, or maybe they're like, hey, my sketching isn't fantastic, or my writing isn't great, but I can generate a lot of sales. And one of the things that we did when the program kind of began was, go to the library, check out a whole bunch of graphic novels, and look inside. How many names are given credit right away? It's not one person typically that does all of it, so that there's this kind of communal sort of thing that we're doing as well. I do want to say, if we hadn't covered it before, that so many of our students have been like, oh, I remember her. She graduated from Nandua. And I think that it's huge for people to see, real examples of someone who has followed their dream. And I love how earlier in the interview, none of this just unfolded magically and came out perfect. There was fear, there was anxiety, I need to take a break from that. I don't know if I'm good enough for this. But then there's also the beauty of your dad's friend giving you the painting tools, and your mom bringing home pens from work, and it was just an extra layer that they believed in you, and you set off on this mission even after setting art aside for a while. And like Sarah said, if you hadn't gotten into that particular film class and realized you really had a passion to talk about this particular thing, that's when that author or illustrator was born, or the metamorphosis, it became this super real thing. And we always want our kids to go above and beyond just the testing kind of atmosphere that we have. I am curious about, and our students are curious about, what's your next project? If you can let any cats out of the bag, or multiple projects that you have coming up. That would be one of the questions that I'd like to ask.
Yeah. So right now I'm at the very end of a new project that you can maybe cut that out. My dad is calling. I told him I was going to be on with you guys. So right now I'm at the very end of a really big project. I'm working on my first fiction book. So my story starts with me wanting to tell stories. I never, ever thought that I would be a biographer, someone who was writing nonfiction stories. So this is actually my first picture book that I've written and illustrated, and the story is fully fictional. And it's been an intense road, probably because I put a lot of pressure on myself to make it as beautiful and as special as possible. But that'll be coming out next year. And that's all I'm going to say about it. It'll be a little bit more of a surprise. And another exciting thing that, may or may not turn into anything is I'm slowly dipping my toe into animation, which is sort of a kind of return to the world of film and television that I was in before I started making books. So my books, Little Leaders and Little Dreamers and Little Legends, have a film and TV option. An option may or may not turn into anything, but there's a potential for the studio to kind of develop it into an idea for that medium. And then also I'm writing a script for a TV show for a studio right now. So, they may turn into something, they may not, but they're all really important learning processes for me. And it's something that I want for myself. So I'm trying to simultaneously make it as special as possible while also reminding myself, it's cool, it doesn't matter. Just keep the stakes really low so I can be as creative as possible. So a few different things going. And I actually don't think I have another book on the coming down the pipeline, but this new book, I Love You Like Yellow, this will come out at the end of next month. And it's sort of like a bit of a goodnight story. It's just a number of I love yous. I love you like this. I love you like that. And it's really, really sweet, written by Andrea Beatty, who most people know for having written Ada Twist Scientist and Iggy Peck Architect. And I mean, she's a beautiful writer. And the story was just really so fun and special to illustrate. This one, I had the opportunity to mix together traditional media and digital media. So it was a fun kind of creative process on that one. So that's what's new.
Oh, speaking of digital media, can I interrupt?
Please.
I see your drawing tablet behind you. I'm curious to see what kind it is because I got one for Christmas and I am loving it. So I want to know what you have.
This is a Wacom Cintiq. So this is kind of the industry standard for animation and illustration. And it does connect to my computer, which is right off camera. And when I'm working on there, I'm usually working in Photoshop to do all of my drawings. So for example, in this book, I did all of the under paintings essentially in colored pencils, scanned them, brought them into the computer and colored everything in. And I worked with a little stylus and I draw directly on the screen. But the book that I'm currently working on, I'm doing all on the iPad actually.
Oh yeah.
In Procreate.
Oh, perfect. I just, Ashlyn and another boy in her class inspired me to buy a new iPad mini and an Apple Pencil. So that's still coming. They're taking their time sending it to me. But I got so into watching them draw on their little tablets and I'm like, oh, I want that so badly.
It's a kind of a freeing thing. You have every tool, every color at your disposal, and you can just go anywhere you want. So sometimes I really enjoy working in a coffee shop or people watching and sketching outside. And so sometimes that's a really fun way to do that and not lug around a bunch of different media with you. So here's an example. This is the underpainting that I did. I just did it in a medium red, I think because it was the middle of the pandemic and I didn't have access to other colors. I had a lot of red. So I just did a medium tone so I wouldn't go too dark and too light. And I put in all of my values and I scanned that in. And then I laid in all of the color in Photoshop. And that's the secret case cover on this book.
Ah,
It's mom and kid jumping in a puddle.
so that watercolor you said, or colored pencil of the red was the beginning, and that's the final product on the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. That's awesome.
One of my questions earlier was going to be, do you prefer, kind of old school methods of pen and pencil and paper or digital? And if I'm not mistaken, it seems like this immersion, this kind of crossbreed of both of those things coming together, is kind of what you use as your toolkit. Do you have a preference, digital or old school, or do you really like that blend of having both and just opening up those worlds of opportunity? How do you feel about that?
Honestly, I feel like I kind of work differently in any single medium. So if you hand me a felt tip pen, I would draw differently than I would if I had a pencil in my hand, than if I had a crayon in my hand. And I feel the same way about digital media. It's just one in this long list of different ways to tell a story, to make an image. And so when you mix them together, you get something completely new. So I always tell young people, like, to me, it's not important the quality of the materials, how expensive they are, where you're getting them from, because if you give me anything, I'm going to draw with it. If you leave a stick on the ground, I'm going to doodle in the dirt with it. So anything can be an art making medium. I feel lucky that I have the freedom to just buy everything in the art supply store apparently and just bring it here and make a mess in whatever medium I want. But it's really just about what's going to be the best way to tell this story. For this book, I wanted it to feel really sweet and dreamlike. And so I wanted to capture these kind of like soft edges. And I was able to do that with the mixture of the brushes that I used in Photoshop, while also creating this kind of grainy texture with the colored pencils. So it's really just about, how can I bring these ingredients essentially together to make a new flavor for the people that I'm serving this book to.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Cool. I love the look of that yellow.
Yeah,
Very
it came out really nice. And I did the same thing for this other book, Hello Star, which is also really kind of dreamlike, but it's also filled with all of these science facts. So I wanted it to feel like really kind of grounded in technology and facts, but also feel really sweet and dreamlike, like anybody might want to, you know, become an astronaut and go to the stars.
cool. I just thought of a question. Do you like, if you had to choose, if you could only do one thing, either write your own and illustrate your own or illustrate for others, what would you choose?
Always choose to work on my own stories. Honestly, no. I mean, I would maybe not always, but there's something that feels so freeing and also really intimidating about working on my own books. But I feel like I have so many stories that I want to share that I definitely would always want to prefer working on my own stories. But you know, that may not always be the case. There is something really nice about the collaborative process of working on a book written by someone else, because you know, they're using this toolkit that I don't have. Andrea in particular, she writes in verse. She has an incredible sense of rhyme and storytelling through her, you know, very simple language. And that is not a tool that I have. And so I often think about working on books a bit like I'm kind of I'm a translator. You know, she's speaking French and I'm speaking English. And so together we're making something that these people, you know, other people can enjoy. So that's no shade to other people's writing, but I will always want to work on my own stuff.
What I figured. Do you have anything else?
I could ask a million things, but that's okay. We could
All right.
go other ones on the list. Thank you so much.
Do you have anything else? All right, well, we really appreciate you. We won't take any more of your time. I know you're busy. And it's actually just about time that we're allowed to leave too. But thank you so much. It looks nice and sunny with your window. We have really rainy weather today.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's breezy and cold, but it is sunny. And that's the reason I like working in this studio. Actually, like when I work digitally, you can never see on my screen. It's like a little bit too bright in here, but it's good for mental health to get that vitamin D.
Well, thank you so much, Vashti.
Thank you.
I will send you some digital images of Ashlyn's work so you can really
Yeah,
see
I would love to see it.
I will definitely send you the link for our Comics for Cancer website once I update it for this year's store. We open from March 1st through the end of the month. So we would love you to see what the kids have been working on. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Take
Have
care.
a good rest of the day.
Thanks.